Yeah.
So you mentioned sizzle factor.
Yes.
Can you define that? Is it definable?
That is something I came up with to differentiate myself from other folks in HR and talent acquisition and corporate recruiting. What's that edge in terms of wanting to talk with me? If someone's highly talented, they have options, right? So why would they want to talk to me or my company? And so it allowed me to reach out and to, when I contact candidates, I ask them what's their sizzle factor. Because even before we get on a video interview or I meet them in person, they've kind of shared with me, I'm not looking for a book report, I'm not looking for a college thesis, I'm not looking for a paragraph, but tell me why we should hire you. Why should I spend my time and your time getting to know who you are?
Right.
And that type of thing. And so what's your sizzle factor? It kind of stuck as, what makes you a hot candidate?
Welcome to Beyond the Ledger, real conversations with people driving business forward. I'm Troy Ashby, CPA and host. Each episode, we unpack stories, challenges, and insights from today's top accounting and finance leaders. This podcast is brought to you by my friends over at MarketScale.
Welcome back to Beyond the Ledger. Today's guest is Jed Gifford, a former broadcast journalist whose career has taken him from breaking news, human interest stories, and some of the biggest stages in sports, including the Olympics, the Masters, and the Stanley Cup Finals. After graduating from UT with a degree in broadcast journalism, he has spent 7 years in television before making a career pivot into talent scouting and corporate recruiting. Since then, he's built a reputation for spotting talent, building relationships, and helping people discover what he calls their sizzle factor. Jed, welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
It is awesome, man. We have known each other since, I think I looked back, 2009, 2010.
Yeah, we're going on a decade. You bet.
I think that's more than a decade.
Well, that's true. More than a decade, but it's flown by.
It sure
has
has.
Certainly flown by.
It sure has. Well, I cannot wait to get into your story. From all the intro is only touches on what you've done. But before that,
you bet.
Let's pause, and why don't you tell people something they can't find about you on LinkedIn?
Well, I think, LinkedIn is your digital footprint, right? But I think you talked about my broadcast television career. There's so much that I did with other people across the country that you can't just put on a resume or a LinkedIn profile. The newsmakers, the athletes, the celebrities, the human interest stories. You talked about some of those big events that I covered, a Daytona 500, right? Covering the Cowboys when they were actually winning Super Bowls. They've been pretty mediocre the last, couple decades here.
Not this year.
But in terms of LinkedIn, just the ability to make an impact in different industries, broadcast television, commercial real estate, automotive, now back in HVAC. And so, in terms of what's not on LinkedIn, it's probably just the depth of relationships and the ability to connect with people, mentor, coach others.
Yeah. Well, and, I didn't know you started in that career, but you've always been a great communicator. Let's start with kind of what, with that initial background, how is that the relationship piece and how you've kind of used what you were taught in your first part of your career, and how is that taking you to today and successes in today?
Well, I think it's an extension of what I did, right? Storytelling, asking questions. I was interviewing people with a camera and a microphone, either as a one-man band or as part of a news and sports crew.
Sure.
So that skill set, that who, what, when, where, and why, right? The basics of capital J journalism applies to what I do in talent acquisition from a corporate perspective. And so digging, being a detective, learning more about someone's background, learning more about a company and sharing those details. I mean, in terms of my experience in front and behind the camera, I'm comfortable talking to people. It's natural for me. I've always been an extroverted individual, and I've just taken that and kind of pivoted, to use your phrase earlier, from broadcast television and that world, that sandbox, now into a corporate setting. I was fortunate to kind of have some Forrest Gump moments, meeting famous people either on the set, in a newsroom, or out in the community. But the transition to corporate America was something I did for a work-life balance and family reasons, right? I love broadcast television. I still read the trades every single day. I went from working at one local television station, doing the nomad TV life, to impacting over 200 TV stations and networks around the country.
Yeah.
ESPN, the Weather Channel, New York, LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, Dallas, Fort Worth, other markets, Denver, and Miami. What I'm able to do is apply the experience in television to talking with you today on this podcast, talking with other people at the executive level, the C-suite, all the way down to someone who's a high school senior trying to get that first job, or that college junior senior looking to get that internship or that first career. And so relatability, working across North America, I have a lot of icebreaker stories. I can reference something, maybe a university or a college or maybe a company they work for. I've got some nuggets of information because I try to be as well-rounded and as well-read as possible so I can make an instant connection with somebody. Yeah. I think that is a differentiator. That's probably what's part of my sizzle factor, is my authentic approach to getting to know somebody. Yeah. And that's part of storytelling as well.
It sure is. Talk to us about, that's a big transition.
Yes,
and I think,
it is.
In the pre-show we were talking about, that being maybe one of your biggest obstacles or challenges that you've had. What was that like?
So I was fortunate. I had gotten married and wanted to start a family, and you're working in broadcast television. You're either working very early mornings, going to bed at 7 o'clock at night and waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to do the morning show, or in my case, I was working nights. So you're working like a 2 to midnight shift.
Right.
Split days off, every holiday, every weekend, because I was doing a lot of sports. And I actually found a company in Las Colinas, legendary company by the name of Talent Dynamics here in Dallas, in Las Colinas. So I wound up being a talent scout and an account manager in television. So instead of me going straight into corporate America, I had this transition position. So I became an industry insider, going to all the various conferences and finding, working with TV stations and networks to help them find on-air talent, anchors, reporter, weather, and sports talent. So it was a bridge.
What a great
But it
bridge.
wasn't a bridge for 12 months. I was there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And so it worked out that it was still in television, but not at a television station. So I was working Monday through Friday. I had the work-life balance, the family time, but still able to leverage my journalism background, my storytelling. Again, very serendipitous that I found a company in Dallas-Fort Worth. I didn't have to move. Yeah. And they are the industry leader as it relates to all things broadcast television, on-air and off-air talent. And so we had team members that would handle off-air talent, producers, news directors, general managers, and I was responsible for the on-air talent, the folks you see in front of the camera, out in the field, that type of thing. And so it was my world. It was my world. And so did that for 8 years. So basically, all told, about 15 years in broadcast television. And because of that background, I have contacts all over the country that are reaching out to me. How did you pivot out of TV, right? Yeah. I'm now at a point in my life where I want to do something different. And so as a journalism major, you can do just about anything, right? You understand deadlines, and you understand corporate communications and marketing. Some folks in journalism have gone into sales because we're extroverts. Yeah. Right? And so that transition to Talent Dynamics out of local television has paid huge dividends, and that's probably the biggest marker in my career, because I was able to transition into something that was relevant, relatable, but I was able to expand my skill set.
I don't know why I didn't think about this, but what a great way to bridge it.
Yes.
Not everybody gets that opportunity. Yes. It's not too unsimilar to before I started Benchmark, how I got out of accounting and went to the big firm, placing accountants, right? So as a CPA, and that was the thing that kind of allowed me to take that step away from my education, away from what I thought I knew as a first generation college grad, like what am I doing? But that's great. Now, is that where you made this big placement of this big name that everybody's going to know?
Yes, and so it's all about networking and relationships. And so I was fortunate to work with a lot of large media groups. Now, obviously, as we all know, the broadcast sandbox has evolved and changed. Yeah. We used to have a lot of large number of broadcast television ownership groups, not just the O&Os, the owned and operated stations around the country in large markets, but we had all these family-owned or publicly traded media companies that have kind of been gobbling each other up. Yeah. Been a lot of consolidation, a lot of ownership changes. And so, yes, I was fortunate to work with some stations around the country and finding a chief meteorologist or a main anchor. I worked with Al Jaffe at ESPN. I worked with the team at the Weather Channel. And so some of the folks that are at the networks, I have great pride that I was basically a talent scout, but kind of an agent too, because you had to nurture those relationships. And maybe someone was under contract and they weren't eligible and available to a station. And so we just kept those relationships going and networking and keeping in touch and facilitating, when your contract's up, let's talk. Let's get that top 5 or top 10 out in your contract to where you'll be eligible to talk. And so, yes, I was fortunate to place a lot of, I think, strong talent, memorable talent that have made a real impact in their local markets or at the national level.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so you've made that change. You're now you're at Lennox, right?
Now I'm at Lennox. Back at Lennox, I'm a Boomerang employee, as a matter of fact. Yes.
So, I know most of our audience, they're either up and coming or they're already leaders in the accounting world. The reason I wanted you here is because you get a talent acquisition, an HR perspective, at somebody who's looking at talent when people are either applying or what are you looking for? One of the things that I know you're really good at is spotting talent. You've also helped a lot of people, coaching them on whatever it is, their resume, their LinkedIn, and we can get into some of that too. But talk to the audience and what are some things that you're looking for or you see or common mistakes?
Well, I look beyond the resume or the LinkedIn profile. Maybe they were a high school or college athlete. Maybe they were in the military, right? It's more than just having a bachelor's or a master's or an MBA. Maybe there was something special about who they are, right? Or maybe when I reached out to them and how they responded to me in terms of my questionnaire responses or questionnaire and their responses to kind of an initial conversation. I look at everything, right? I'm not some of these folks in talent acquisition or recruiting that only look at the first 5 or 10 resumes and they make a hiring decision. I look at everything to ensure that I don't miss anything. But in terms of spotting talent, it's finding that diamond in the rough, finding that individual that may already be a people leader, but they've got a little something extra. They've got something special. They've shared with me or have identified their sizzle factor. What makes them a can't miss candidate? What makes them a high potential candidate or an employee? Makes them highly promotable as well. And so it's having conversations with them and letting them be authentic and vulnerable with me, sharing where they want to go with their career in the short and long term, regardless if they're right out of college as an entry level 22, 23-year-old, or someone who's been in the industry, their specific industry for 20, 30, 40 years and looking to pivot or look for a new opportunity either on an active or passive job search or a strategic job search.
So you mentioned sizzle factor.
Yes.
Can you define that? Is it definable?
That is something I came up with to differentiate myself from others folks in HR and talent acquisition and corporate recruiting. What's that edge in terms of wanting to talk with me? If someone's highly talented, they have options, right? So why would they want to talk to me or my company? And so it allowed me to reach out and to, when I contact candidates, I ask them what's their sizzle factor. Because even before we get on a video interview or I meet them in person, they've kind of shared with me. I'm not looking for a book report. I'm not looking for a college thesis. I'm not looking for a paragraph. But tell me why we should hire you. Why should I spend my time and your time getting to know who you are?
Right.
That type of thing. And so what's your sizzle factor? It kind of stuck as, what makes you a hot candidate, right?
Right.
And I've just utilized it, and it's appropriate now because I'm back in HVAC at Lennox, global leader in climate controlled solutions. We hot and cold, right? You want to make sure, and so it's very appropriate in my industry that I'm in. But I've also been in automotive, commercial real estate. I was in broadcast television. So what differentiates you is what matters.
So I love that because that question comes up in an interview a lot.
Yes.
Why should I hire you?
Yes.
And sizzle factor. So now let's talk about, I'm going to coin a phrase.
Sure.
Sizzle factor. What quick way to get overlooked in Jed's eyes?
I would say that folks that don't dress for success, they're late for an interview. They undersell themselves. Maybe they've got a dynamic resume with or without AI help, right?
Sure.
Now in this day and age, that they undersell themselves. They don't put metrics and measurables on their resume. They're not able to articulate to me and others in either a first round interview or a final interview why they have the transferable skill set to make an opportunity. And so why do they fall flat? Why do they not sizzle? Is they don't know their story. They don't know their brand. They're not able to going back to my journalism background, they're not able to be a good storyteller on their career.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of accountants.
Yes. And
some of them are great at storytelling and some aren't. Sometimes the resume is spotless. Sometimes you just mentioned measurables. Putting measurables is something I always talk to people about. But not all accountants are outgoing communicators like broadcast journalism, Jed.
Sure.
So how do you make sure that you don't get fooled by a great communicator who's good at telling a story that compared to somebody who is a rock star? Are you pulling that out of them, or what?
That's, I mean, perfect example. I actually, a couple months ago, actually, a sales candidate we were talking to had an incredible resume, right? Former athlete, right? So he had kind of that competitive edge, right? That winner's mindset, winner's mentality. But when I got him on the interview, he fell flat. First of all, was not dressed for success. Was in a t-shirt. It was a video interview. He was like in his lazy boy. He was not dressed for success. And then was not able to walk me through his resume. He had all these great accolades on the resume, but was not able to back them up. He was not able to articulate them. Lower energy, right? You would expect someone to be able in sales to be able to share their story and walk through. And so, but going back to your accounting and finance question, I think that goes back to people just practicing their story. And they may be an introvert, but they need to be able to turn it on when they need to turn it on. Maybe they're the phrase social battery. Maybe they just need to have the battery revved up a little bit to be able to walk through their work history and why they should be hired, why they should continue in the interview process, and then turn it off after the interview. But be able to turn it on, turn it off. But I think for folks, they need to be able to be humbly confident and be able to tell their story in terms of their work history, right? Walking through their college education. Maybe they've got certifications or licenses, or what was the motivation for getting the CPA? What was the motivation for getting the MBA? Why don't you have a CPA?
Fair.
Right? You're going to hold yourself back if certain criteria are not met. So certain companies need certain positions with certain skill sets, and so you're limiting your earning potential potentially if you don't have certain degrees or certifications or licenses. And so they need to look themselves in the mirror and evaluate, regardless if you're 21 or 22 years old, you're 5 years into it, maybe you've been in Big Four and you're looking to get into a corporate opportunity, or you're 25 years in and you're a people leader, right? You're at that director level, VP level. You still need to exhibit humble confidence if you want to become maybe a CFO.
I wanted to put a pin in that humble confidence and come back to it.
You bet.
But you said something that I think is really relevant, and it's part of that storytelling. A weakness that somebody may already know that they have. For example, they didn't get the CPA, or they didn't get the MBA, or whatever that is. I think it's important to mention that before it's asked, because it's a glaring thing, and there might be a relevant story, whether it be, family started early or illness or whatever it is. It depends on where you are in your career, but I think it's important to address those weaknesses that maybe people are thinking and don't even ask.
And I don't, people, the standard, what are your 3 strengths? What are your 3 weaknesses? I don't like to use the word weakness. I like to use the phrase area of growth potential.
Sure.
Right? Because a weakness is going to highlight, let's focus on what you do well. What can you bring to the table for a company or this position, the current role you're interviewing for, or where do you see yourself in 2, 3, 4 years? And so an area of growth potential may be going after that MBA or that master's or that CPA, and maybe there was a reason, a real life reason, that you weren't able to go back to school, or you didn't go get it right after your undergraduate. And so, but if they're able to be authentic and provide a relevant, solid answer, I think companies will accept that.
Sure.
Right? And some people, they may have all the letters after their name, but if they don't have the ability and the soft skills to relate and be a good teammate, it doesn't matter if you've got a CPA or MBA. If you're talking in the clouds and not relatable to your staff, to your coworkers, your peers, your customers, your vendors, you could have all the letters after your name, but if you're not a good person, if you are not humbly confident, then that's a problem.
You brought us back right to humble confidence. So let's go into that, because I think humble confidence is not easy. It's, I'll let you define it. It actually makes total sense just in the 2 words, but talk to us about that.
Someone that is coachable, regardless if they are a people leader or not, because those folks have leaders as well. Maybe you're a CFO, you still have to report to somebody, the CEO or the board, right? Or maybe you're an individual contributor. You can influence with or without authority, even if you don't have headcount reporting to you. Somebody who's humbly confident, I use that phrase, is someone who's confident in their ability, but knows they don't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room. They have room to grow. Maybe they take advantage of a mentor or a coach to where they can accelerate their career because they know they don't know everything.
Sure.
Regardless if you're in sales or accounting or finance, someone who's humbly confident, even if you have a CPA or an MBA or a master's, you can't be cocky or arrogant, because that will come through in meetings, that will come through in a mid-year annual review, that will come through in an interview. It just oozes. It just oozes out of your pores, right? Someone could be dressed for success, but if you come across not authentic and arrogant, people don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
You could be the most talented person on a team or in a company, but if you're not relatable and authentic with people, they don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
And they're not going to run through a wall for you. Especially if you're a people leader and you're not relating to folks, they're not going to want to work for you, and they may leave your organization. They're not going to leave the company. They're going to leave their direct manager, because that direct manager is not investing in them, and the leader's not humbly confident.
All right. So let's take a little pivot for a second. Okay. I want to dive in. AI is everywhere.
Yes.
And you alluded to it a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
But regarding AI, what mistakes are you seeing that candidates, or let's just use candidates or employees, are coming with you that you can spot to try to prevent them from making these mistakes?
Well, I had a teammate recently had someone, they were darting their eyes. Instead of being eye contact, dialed in, their eyes were darting to another screen because they were typing in the question that the teammate was asking them about, and quickly leveraging AI to get a response.
Stop.
Again, it was fake. It was not authentic. They were not showcasing their real skills. AI is a tool, right? It's kind of like an open book test for a lot of people.
Sure.
But in that instance, in an interview, they exposed that they were
that's wild.
cheating.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, and that has not happened to me, right? And part of what I do also with a pre-screen before I talk with someone over Teams or Zoom is I do have an evaluation questionnaire. And fortunately, I am not getting AI responses because I think they know that I'm looking for that authenticity. But I think people are maybe using AI as a crutch, regardless of what platform you're using with AI. We know talent acquisition, HR, hiring managers will know that it's not who you are. It's not your voice.
Right.
It goes back to your story. Right. It doesn't feel real. But that candidate that was darting their eyes into another screen,
that's wild.
It was a video interview, was reading an AI response to the question.
Wow.
It's okay to pause, think about it. Hopefully you've practiced some of your responses and how you want to tell your story and respond. But that individual used AI as a crutch and lost eye contact with the interviewer.
Yeah, that's wild. Eye contact, it's so necessary anyway, but I've seen resumes become bland with AI. I can almost spot it when it's
because they're trying to match the job description.
Yeah. And
where are the metrics and measurables?
Right.
Your wins, your losses, your achievements, the impact you've had on a business. And so it's again artificial, right? AI, artificial intelligence, right? And so we've seen that. So when someone's able to put together a resume or their LinkedIn profile has a robust skill set with that, that doesn't come across as AI, but you can spot it.
Yeah.
You can spot. And fortunately, haven't run into that a lot because I think how I approach reaching out to a candidate, right? They've applied to my role or I've reached out to them on LinkedIn or name your platform. I want the real person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Show me your vulnerability. Show me who you are, because that's real. That's not a robot. That's not some, AI generated response.
Yeah. So I literally had this conversation late last night. And so the counter to some of what you're saying from a candidate perspective is I have to get past the algorithm, the screener, the making sure it hits somebody's plate. Somebody comes to me, I'm getting it right in front of the leader and skipping a step or two.
Yes.
But talk from your perspective, this, because there is an over engineering because they're trying to make sure that they don't get weeded out for you to ever even see it.
Well, because they may be one of 37 applicants or 3,700 applicants or 137 applicants. Sure. You can't just post and pray. If you've identified a company and you want to work for them and they're an employer of choice, that's where you need to network and find someone like me, rattle off a message on LinkedIn and introduce yourself. But I think they're hung up that companies are using AI to weed out candidates. companies can't do that. I mean, you have to see, because you're going to miss some candidates by doing that.
Sure.
Right. And so it goes back to my earlier comment about not just looking at the first 5 or 7 or 15 resumes. There may be 54 candidates, and it's that 42nd person.
Sure.
That's the rock star that you're going to hire, you're going to bring in. And so, but I think candidates need to recognize that companies are not out to get them with AI, right? We're leveraging AI to be more effective and efficient in our evaluation process. It is not replacing the human element of someone who has the skill set to go through and identify folks that hopefully ideally have a solid resume, but maybe there's something that we want to glean from that. And so I'm hearing some of that candidates, or you're weeding us out. Not necessarily, right? I can't speak for all companies in North America, but great talent acquisition professionals are not leveraging AI to weed people out. It's allowing us to be more efficient with our time.
So you've heard it here first, dispelling the biggest myth that I hear all the time. And it's not to say that everybody is not, there's not correct. Some sort of a ranking system, right. But I think the authentication or the authenticity needs to come through.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying.
Well, and it's not just the hard skills on a piece of paper, on a resume or LinkedIn profile. It is your soft skills.
Sure.
Right? That's not AI, right? It's, are you able to hold a conversation? Are you able to show me and tell me in your 2-minute elevator pitch or your 30-second commercial, or what are your strengths? What are your areas of growth potential? Tell me what your last mid-year review, what did your manager tell us about? I mean, that's going to leave me with more of an impression of who you are on what you do well in your current role. Because again, what's the phrase? Past performance is an indication of future performance and success. And so the candidates that are using AI as a crutch, that they're not getting interviews, they're not doing the legwork. Right? They're making excuses, I think, for why they're not moving forward, because they have not been able to articulate. It goes back to storytelling and their brand, right? Yeah. Need to work on that, practice that, instead of saying companies, are screening you out because of AI. That may not be the case. You may need to work on your resume and your digital footprint and your interview preparation. It goes back to, we talk about location in real estate. How about network, right? Practice.
Absolutely. You've got I don't know if it's a passion project, Jed the Career Coach.
Yes.
And I feel like I just got a masterclass in a very brief period of time. But are those things that you work on with people in that space?
Some things like that come naturally for some people, regardless if they're an introvert or an extrovert. Someone could be an extrovert and have a lot of personality and be very confident in who they are, humbly confident in who they are, but you can still twist and tweak things. And so what I do with folks, they need kind of an advocate, right? Someone who's going to be that confident and they can be vulnerable. Job interview preparation, mock interviews, role playing, right? Those are things it's the little things that make a difference. If let's say you're one of 3 finalists for an opportunity, it's not necessarily what's on paper. It's the little things that you've shared during an interview with hiring managers or HR that are going to allow you to get that offer versus finishing on the podium with a silver or bronze medalist.
Yeah.
Or you finish 4th and you're off the podium, right? And hopefully, if you don't necessarily always, because it's hard to get jobs, it's hard to get interviews and offers. But if you do finish 2nd or 3rd, stay positive, because maybe you've left a favorable impression for another opportunity with that company.
Right.
And so we're always looking for folks that are strong interviews, that have potential. But part of the career coaching, Jed, the career coach, is literally working on your game, working on your communication skills, working on your story, having them tell me who they are.
Yeah.
And working through that to where they're able to articulate. It goes from their brain to their mouth, and they're able to, in a phone interview, video interview, in-person interview, be able to highlight what they do well. Yeah. And what value they can bring to a company, short and long term, right? And prepare, bring notes, it is an open book test. Have your questions ready. Show that you care and you've done your research on companies, right? And so it's all those little small details that make a difference in an interview.
It's actually amazing. The number one thing that I think people forget nowadays is your notes, Padfolio.
Yes.
And it's
right. I mean, it's weird. It's right here.
It's weird as the interviewer, and you're interviewing somebody, and they literally come in with nothing, or maybe their resume only,
or they don't even take notes on their phone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they've silenced their phone, which is good. They're not getting alerts and it's going off in an interview. But if they come in with no copies of the resumes, or maybe they were asked to do a presentation, maybe a 30, 60, 90-day outlook, or maybe they took it upon themselves. I had a candidate just yesterday, literally was not asked to present something, but came in with their strategy for the new role. That's a differentiator between the two other candidates.
Sure. Because
they came prepared. They had thought about the role and how they were going to differentiate themselves. And so it is okay to have a portfolio. It is okay to have notes. As someone who was in broadcast television, I wouldn't just want to be on camera and relying on the teleprompter, because technology sometimes goes down. And so I want to be able to reference something. But I think candidates, if they practice their story, it's going to become second nature. Right. And so part of that career coaching is working with them to gain that muscle memory. To also, that helps with their confidence. If they know their story and know what the talking points they need to hit during an interview, regardless if it's a conversational interview or a behavioral based, provide an example, tell me a time when, they'll walk into that interview confident because they've practiced with a family member, with me, with someone else, or with themselves in a mirror, to where they're ready to go and they're prepped. But they also have their kind of notes or some of their talking points that they can reference. And it's okay to look down or pause. It's okay. And then answer the question. Instead of rambling on, and we use this phrase at Lennox, I can't take credit for it. We want candidates to use verbal economy. Ask and answer. Don't just ramble. Keep it simple. The KISS method, right?
That's so true. I talk about keeping it short, be concise, answer the question that was asked.
Yes.
And if there's more to be asked of you, they will ask you more. But sometimes it's like you're filling the room and the interview is going off rails and you don't know it. And a lot of times it's nerves, right?
Yes.
And everybody can do it.
And it's okay to have sweaty palms and butterflies in your stomach. That's natural.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to be a robot, right? During the interview process. You don't want the hiring manager telling HR or talent acquisition, I interviewed this candidate for 30 to 45 minutes and I only got 2 questions in because they over-talked.
Right.
They overshared. They said things that were inappropriate or not applicable to the job at hand.
Yeah.
So again, that comes with practice, knowing your answers to questions, right? You're not going to know every question, right? But if you practice enough ahead of time, you'll know your story and be able to pivot accordingly,
right?
Without rambling. Yeah,
it's great. All right, so before I move into the final segment, the final 3, anything that you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I mean, let me look at my notes. How about that, right? I wanted to talk about that. I think for folks, they need to advocate for themselves, regardless if they are in a current situation where they want to be move laterally or up the food chain and within their current company, advocate for themselves. Find a mentor, find a coach, leverage your manager or your manager's manager, right? Step level with that. Get visibility within the team or the organization, depending on the size, if it's privately held or publicly traded. Partner with your HR leader. Let them know that you are committed to the company long term and you want to stay with the company and you're looking for a new challenge. Now, that doesn't mean apply for 17 openings, right? Be strategic in your thought process on where you want to take your career. Know what you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years and articulate that to your manager during your mid-year and annual reviews. Articulate that to your HR business partner to help with that. But advocate for yourself.
Yeah. You
can't assume your company knows what you want to do, right? They want to retain you. If you are a high potential, high performer, they will find an opportunity. You won't always have to raise your hand. You want people tapping you on the shoulder for a new assignment. With that, attitude and effort go a long way. Have a motor, right? Have a great mindset. Be a good person, kind of that golden rule or the platinum rule you read about. Be coachable, be a sponge, be a student of the business, right? Regardless of the company or the industry, read about it. Be a constant learner. If you don't know, ask questions. Don't fake it till you make it. You always hear that phrase.
Yeah.
Don't fake it, because again, it's not authentic, right? I'm currently reading Think Again by Adam Grant. Very good book. And actually, I was at a conference and we talked about certain books. A couple of books that I recommend is Unconscious Bias by Pamela Fuller. Mark Murphy and Ann Chow. And so that's more a leadership development opportunity for folks, but that's for an individual contributor too. With Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham. And then again, as I said, Think Again by Adam Grant. These are books that are relevant to an individual, regardless if they're in their 20s or you're in your 50s or 60s and kind of the twilight of your career needing to work another 5, 10, 15 years. It boils down to, yes, technical aptitude. Can you handle month-end close and journal entries and all of that? But it's also the differentiator when people win interviews and get offers are the soft skills. Mm-hmm. It's the soft skills. It's the relatability. It's the humble confidence. It's the approachability. You don't want to be robotic, right? We talk about AI and that's a robot, right? You want to be, don't lose that human ability to relate to people with that. Make sure you're influencing with or without authority. You may not have direct reports, right? In my career, I've been an individual contributor. I've also been a people leader. You can still make an impact in the business without having a job title or 8 or 80 direct reports.
Right.
Right. You can work with the C-suite. You can work with, blue collar or white collar workers by just handling your business with that. I think we talked about staying connected. We talked about networking with folks. Have that, what's your sizzle factor? That enthusiasm, that passion for what you're doing, regardless if you are, a CFO or someone coming out of Big Four and they're looking to get into a corporate opportunity, right? Or get into consulting, or maybe you want to be like you and be an entrepreneur and run your own business someday, right? But don't lose who you are. Know who you are. Be detailed, organized, conscientious, this applies for someone at 22 years of age or someone who's 62 or 72 years of age. It's just life skills that I wish maybe we had in high school and college, right? I think I've been advocating and saying for years that we should have financial planning and like job interview preparation, resume writing, and LinkedIn. That should be a course, a class, some sort of project so we're prepared to go out in the real world.
Yeah. Financial
planning and then kind of your career planning as well with that. Does that help flesh that out a little bit?
I feel like I don't even have to go to the final 3, right? But I'm going to anyway. Okay. And you may have to repeat yourself.
You bet.
But before you do, one of the things that I've noticed in my career, mm-hmm. and you've talked about it several times over and over, is the soft skills, the communication. Yes. Mm-hmm. And with my kids, mm-hmm. it's been something that we're working on. They're 14 and 13. Mm-hmm. And we, practice telling a story in front of the family. Because I see it every day. Mm-hmm. I see it every day that the person that I know should get the job may not, right. Which I also prep a lot and role play as long as they'll let me. Sometimes maybe there's some pride there and they don't want that. Right. But
and I've run into that too, where I had someone that reached out to me. We grew up together here in North Texas. He had not interviewed. He hadn't had to interview because he always got other opportunities because of his network. He was tapped on the shoulder. Hey, I'm joining this company. Follow me.
Yep.
He's now in a position where he needs to find employment. The company is downsizing. He's on the open market. He's a free agent. He's entered the NIL portal, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
And maybe it was pride. He did not win an interview because he came across cold, didn't provide examples, but he didn't. I offered the opportunity to practice as his friend, as a longtime friend, knowing him since middle school and high school, but maybe he just didn't want to spend the time and invest in his career. He missed out on an opportunity with a great company because he bombed the interview because he didn't practice. He thought he would go in cold, but he was out of practice. It had been years since he had interviewed. And
I always tell people it's reps.
Yes.
And unfortunately in interviewing, no one gets enough reps if you don't practice.
Right.
So if you're not going to the batting cage,
that's right.
You're not going to be able to hit well in a game.
You're not going to hit 300 or more, right? You're going to be hitting 200 in the Mendoza line or 190 or be 0 for 27 at the plate because you aren't practicing.
Right. So that's how I explain it to people. Yep. Sometimes it gets across, sometimes it doesn't. All right, the final 3.
Yes.
So, and like I said, you've already talked about a lot of these, but we're going to move into this. You don't have to answer them quickly. Sure. It's just I wanted to kind of go through questions with everybody this season.
Sure.
And what's the one thing, if you have to find one thing that accelerated your career?
I think making the conscious choice to step away from broadcast television and get into a more corporate setting, first in broadcast television with Talent Dynamics, networking and going to DFW TRN here in North Texas, networking there. That's how I was able to secure a position with CBRE, the global leader in commercial real estate. because of my broadcast background. I went to Van Tile Group, which is now Berkshire Hathaway Automotive. So Warren Buffett's now in planes, trains, and automobiles, right? Then I went to Lennox because of someone I used to work with at CBRE. Again, it's networking. Then I wasn't necessarily looking to leave Lennox, but got recruited back into the automotive industry. D&M Leasing and their family of companies, running talent acquisition for them. And then kind of a work-life balance opportunity presented itself, and I'm back at Lennox as a boomerang employee. And so one decision accelerated my career, not staying in broadcast television, because I had gotten married, wanted to start a family, more earning potential. So it was money motivated, it was work-life balance motivated, but I think making that conscious choice earlier in my career, not waiting 20 years in and I missed my window. So my earning potential has increased because I made that conscious choice to leave broadcast television. I've been fortunate to help other broadcast television folks, regardless of their family dynamic, pivot out to go into corporate communications, marketing, events, sales, because they have transferable skills. That's another thing too. Having a journalism degree, being well read, being a storyteller has allowed me to. I could bounce into all kinds of different things. I chose to get into talent acquisition because I'm an ambassador of a company. I'm selling the company. I'm able to continue to interview people. Right. I have a passion for wanting to know why, who, what, when, where, and why. Why are you here today? That type of thing. But I would say probably pivoting from broadcast television into corporate America.
That's perfect.
Yes.
All right. And how does somebody stand out on your team? And if you don't want to answer it that way, how does somebody stand out to you as a candidate?
As a candidate, as a teammate, big smile, right? I talk about all the time people on their LinkedIn photos, right? We're not looking for a Facebook photo on there or a wedding photo. We want an authentic smile, dressed for success, someone who brings the energy. They could be an introvert. They could be the quietest person. But if they have that energy and that passion, it comes through, even though they may be the most quiet person in the room, right? Yeah. Show that humble confidence. Collaborate, right? In terms of talent acquisition, someone who's going to secure high-performing placements. And that person's going to be promotable, or maybe they become a client, right? Not just a candidate, but they become a client. Be open, honest, own and advocate for your own career, right? But that, in terms of the fastest way for someone to stand out on a team is results. It comes back to, what can you do for me today, tomorrow, and down the road with that? Be a constant learner, attitude and effort. Be consistent. Don't be a one-hit wonder with a company, right? They hire you because you've got an incredible background and you did well in your first year, but are you sustainable? You want to be, I jokingly say this because I'm a Texas Longhorn, proud Texas Longhorn. You don't want to be Johnny Manziel. He won the Heisman, but didn't do anything at the next level because he didn't work at his craft, right? And so
we can talk about that topic.
You don't want to be a one-hit wonder with that. You want to be someone who is a high performer, an A player, a rock star, and that comes with attitude and effort, your ability to be a sponge, be willing to be coached and trained up and coached up with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Jed. What are you excited about right now?
Well, the fact that I'm on your podcast. I was a guest on your podcast. I'm also a family man, remarried. My daughter's in grad school, very proud of her. She's getting a doctoral degree in occupational therapy, so I'm very proud of that. I'm excited about what's happening at Lennox International, our family of companies, and being a part of that growth of being part of a company that's over 100 years old, 131 years old this year, that was privately held, Midwest values, that we now have a global footprint, and we're publicly traded and are seen as an employer of choice, not only here in North Texas, but around North America. We have a footprint in Canada, the U.S., and in Mexico. And so I'm excited about the future, my future at Lennox, the ability to coach and impact others, mentor others. And so that gets me up in the morning is presenting my story and how I can help others advance their careers as well.
Jed, it has been great to have you on the show, man.
You bet.
You've given so much. I can't wait to see how this is all packaged together because there's so much value that you've provided.
You bet.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.
I'm Troy Ashby, and remember, people are more than their titles, and companies are more than their balance sheets. Follow Beyond the Ledger so you never miss an episode.